Hello, I'm Chief Geyer of the Albuquerque Police Department. This critical incident media briefing is intended to provide the community with information from an officer-involved shooting that occurred on March 30th, 2020. You're about to see relevant video footage and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to the case so that you can have a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know right now. The multi-agency task force conducts very thorough investigations into officer-involved shootings. These typically include requiring investigators to interview multiple witnesses, view numerous hours of video footage, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. We're still in the very early stages of this investigation. Our understanding of this incident may change as additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We also do not draw conclusions about whether the officers acted consistent with our policies and the law until all the facts are known and the investigation is complete. We know from past experiences with this individual in this incident that he appeared to suffer from drug-induced psychosis. However, we will not know for several months, when toxicology reports are available, whether this may have been a factor during this particular incident. We take these incidents very seriously, as with all officer-involved shootings, and we want to be as transparent as possible while protecting the integrity of our investigation. Lieutenant Scott Norris is now going to walk us through the incident and answer some questions, understanding that this is an ongoing investigation.
Hello, I'm Lieutenant Scott Norris with the Violent Crimes Section of the Albuquerque Police Department. In the next several months, the Albuquerque Police Department will continue to investigate and analyze this incident. We will continue interviewing any new witnesses that may come forward. After the investigation is completed, our Force Review Division will forward their findings to the Force Review Board. The board will then evaluate the evidence to determine whether the officer's tactics, drawing, and exhibiting of a weapon and the use of deadly force in this instance met the high standards expected of all Albuquerque police officers. A word of caution: the images and information you are about to see may be disturbing. When a police officer uses force to arrest a suspect and defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. Okay, this is an overview of the area that officers responded to that day. It is here at 917 Edith Boulevard Southeast, and as you can see, it is just north of Cromwell and Edith. This is a closer vantage point from where the officers actually approached the house. So they approached this back house right here where this red dot is, and they were able to make contact with the individual on the side of the house while he was doing yard work. The offender was identified as Valente Acosta Bustillos, and again, he lived at 917 Edith Boulevard Southeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico. The involved officer is identified as Edgar Sandoval. He's been with the police department since March of 2018. He has no prior officer-involved shootings, and his current assignment is the Valley Area Command. The details of the incidents are as follows. On March 30th, 2020 at 12:52 p.m., a report of a welfare check at 917 Edith Boulevard Southeast was generated by Albuquerque Police Dispatch. The caller told the operator, Valente Acosta Bustillos, had not been heard from in 4 or 5 days, and they had not been to work or picked up his paycheck. The caller, who was Valente's son-in-law, also stated that Valente's cell phone was off and that this was unusual behavior. The son-in-law also indicated Valente had not been diagnosed with a mental health illness, and it was unknown if drugs, alcohol, or weapons were involved with the call. At 12:58 p.m., officers were dispatched to the call and arrived at approximately 1:13 p.m. and made contact with Valente. Officer Edgar Sandoval engaged Valente in Spanish while Valente was on the side of the house. Valente was holding a shovel. In Officer Sandoval's interview, he stated that he had built a rapport with Valente from previous contacts and knew that Valente could understand English rather, but Spanish was Valente's preferred language, so he chose to speak to him in Spanish. While discussing the reason for the call with Valente and ensuring his welfare, officers checked to see if Valente had any outstanding warrants. Valente was found to have one confirmed felony warrant for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. At that point, the call changed from a welfare check to a felony arrest, which officers were obligated to enforce. Officer Sandoval told Valente he had an arrest warrant and Valente was going to have to go with officers. Valente argued that his court date was sometime in April, that the papers were fake, and that he wanted to speak to a lawyer. Valente stepped backward inside the doorway of his house and tried to close the security door. Officers followed Valente into the house. Once inside the doorway, Valente briefly raised the shovel sideways above his head. He then lowered the shovel to his side and walked away from officers into a dark bedroom. He was given a verbal command to get down and to put the shovel down. Valente refused and attempted to shut the bedroom door on officers. Officer Sandoval drew his firearm and the assisting officer drew his taser. Valente stopped moving backwards and continued to grasp the shovel as it was lowered to his side. He refused to drop the shovel. Officers gave verbal commands and wanted Valente to back up or he would be tased. Additional commands and warnings were given to put the shovel down. Valente did not drop the shovel. The assisting officer discharged his taser, striking Valente, which was ineffective. Valente raised the shovel over his head with a two-handed grip and swung downward towards the officers in what can be described as a chopping motion. Officers backed up, creating distance from Valente. Valente moved towards officers with the metal blade of the shovel extended and pointed at officers. Officer Sandoval reported that Valente raised the shovel towards him while closing the distance, causing him to be in fear of being struck with the blade of the shovel. Officer Sandoval stated he discharged his handgun 5 times. So we're going to play some audio for you, and this is the 911 call of Valente's son-in-law calling into our communications center, and this was the information that he gave our 911 operator, who then gave that to our dispatcher and then relayed that information to the responding officers.
Albuquerque Police Department Operator 7027, how may I help you?
Yeah, right. I was calling to see if there possibly be any way you guys could maybe send somebody to my father-in-law's house. Nobody's seen or heard from him. And yeah, to do it told to pick up his check or nothing.
Okay, so that's going to be a welfare check on your father?
Yes.
All right, and what is the address for him?
It is 917 Edith, Southeast.
917 Edith Boulevard, Southeast?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is this an apartment or a home?
It's a home.
Okay. And when was the last time you had any contact with them?
It's probably been at least about 4 or 5 days. Anyone could have talked to him. But here we went to call his wife. They said that he picked up his check and his phone off and everything.
Okay, so it's been about 4 to 5 days.
Yeah, usually he doesn't do nothing like that.
I see.
And just figure out somebody who's like bilingual because you know the speaking English too well.
Okay, what's his preferred language?
Spanish.
Spanish. And do you know if there were any weapons involved?
You know what? He doesn't carry nothing like that or no weapons and all that shit.
Okay.
He just didn't worry because we haven't seen or heard from him.
Sure. Do you know if he had any previous like injuries or anything to the dog?
As far as I know, everything should be picked up.
And if there's any history, drugs, and alcohol?
A little bit of alcohol use, nothing to be so worried about.
Sure. Is he diagnosed with any type of behavioral or disorder of any sort?
No, he just won't. I think he's been taken to the site where it was. That was a long time ago, so he's gotten over that.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to show you several videos here. We're going to show you Officer Sandoval's videos. Now, he has 2 videos. The first video that we're going to show you is his actual initial contact with Valente and him engaging Valente in Spanish and basically informing him of our reasoning for being there. The second video actually captures the last part of the contact to where Officer Sandoval informs Valente that he does have a warrant for his arrest and that he is going to have to go with officers. And then it shows Valente run into his house and it shows the subsequent use of force.
Valente, ¿qué pasó? ¿Cómo anda? Su jefe nos habló diciendo que nos iba a presentar otra manera, pues quería saber si estaba bien. No, pues, ¿qué jefe? ¿Lo corrió? Sí. Ok. ¿Los dos? ¿Tenía 2 trabajos o qué? Sí, señor. Ok. Bueno, usted se me afigura mucho con ¿Quién es? ¿Quién es Manuel? ¿Dónde va? ¿Qué? ¿No hay una orden, Petro? No voy a entrar a su casa, como le dije, nomás estábamos, nomás que... Entonces, ¿por qué entró? Este es su patio. Este es mi patio. Sí. Este es mi casa. No es su casa. No puede entrar si está ahí cerrado. Yo me sé las reglas, me gusta que decirme cuáles son las reglas, ¿ok? Ok. Yo vine nomás a ver si estaba bien porque me pidieron que viniera. Voy a decir, está bien. ¿Sabe qué? ¿Qué? Ya tiene más de 15 días que lo corrieron y están haciendo pase y pase y haciéndose robos. Asustándome. ¿Y sabe qué? Yo no me voy a asustar. Mire, ya hemos hablado usted con sus problemas y lo que tiene. Y sí, ok, sí. He does. Ok, Valente. Tiene una orden de arresto. ¿Sí sabe eso, no? A mí no me ha llegado la orden de arresto. Ok. Escrito. Pues le estamos avisando que tiene una orden de arresto. Sí, pero hasta el 29 de abril cuando yo tenía la corte. No le estoy diciendo. No estoy diciendo que es algo para que se presente a la corte. Es una orden de arresto. Oye, yo tengo aquí unos papeles que parecen falsos. Ok. De lo que me han mandado y de lo que me han estado haciendo. Ok. Y déjenme hablo con el abogado. Lo que pasa es de que vamos a tener que llevarlo ahora. ¡Está en mi casa! ¡Dispárenme! ¡Dispárenme! ¡Baje! ¡Hey! ¡No, pon el plan now! ¡Bájelo! 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 ¡Qué bajo! ¡Baje! ¡Back up, you're gonna be chased! ¡Put it down, you're gonna be chased! ¡Bájelo! ¡Bájelo! ¡Póngase en el suelo! ¡En el suelo! ¡En el suelo!
Yeah.
Okay, this third video that we're going to show you belongs to Officer Joseph Bush. He was the assisting officer that I had referred to earlier who discharged his taser. This video is just of Valente running into the house and of actually what you just saw, just from a different angle.
Put it down now! Go back there with... Back up! Back up, you're gonna be tased! Put it down, you're gonna be tased!
So Valente's criminal history and prior police contacts: from 1999 through 2004, he had several DWI offenses. He had a resisting arrest charge as well as a battery on a household member charge. In July of 2014, there was a report of Valente battering his children. The case was forwarded to the Children, Youth, and Families Department. In September of 2017, he was arrested for aggravated battery with a deadly weapon and false imprisonment for a dispute with his girlfriend. In July of 2019, he had a domestic dispute with a family member. The report stated that Valente punched his daughter. No charges were filed due to the victim not wanting to press charges. In December of 2019, there was a 911 call, and the caller advised APD that Valente was acting strange and tying strings around his house. Valente told officers that he used cocaine and methamphetamine and advised people were watching him. He was transported to UNMH Mental Health. In December of 2019, Valente was having delusions of people watching him and wanting to hurt him. He was again transported to UNM Mental Health. In March of 2020, Valente was arrested for aggravated battery with a deadly weapon and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The victim told officers that he was struck on the head with a gun. Valente was found to be in possession of a hammer. In March of 2020, Valente was issued a criminal summons for battery against his landlord, who was trying to serve a 3-day eviction notice. Again, in March of 2020, A warrant was issued for a failure to appear on charges of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. So the next series of photos we're going to show you are actually frame by frame still photos taken from Officer Sandoval's lapel cam once Edgar had entered his house and then entered his bedroom. So here you're going to see a green light and a red light. This is just right after Valente was tased, which, as I mentioned earlier, the taser was ineffective, and you see him raising the shovel right here. The next photo is, again, after Valente was tased. This is when what I referred to earlier is when he came in a downward motion in what can be best described as a chopping motion, slamming the shovel on the bed there. So you see Valente here. This is the corner of the bed. This is, and he rounds the corner of the bed and starts advancing towards officers with the shovel in hand. Continuing advancing towards officers with shovel in hand despite verbal commands of him to back away, drop the shovel. This is continuing to advance on officers. He points the blade of the shovel at officers and continues to close the distance. Continues to close the distance, and this is after the first shots were fired. Continues to close the distance, and this is actually the blade of the shovel right here. This is the outline of Valente's body, so you can see the close proximity that Valente was to the officers when he was coming towards the officers with the shovel. This is the shovel that Valente was in possession of. And autopsy results. So there were at least 6 total defects. 3 defects in the right arm. 1 projectile was recovered at OMI. 1 defect to the right side of the back. 1 defect from back to front. And he had several defects on his arms. And the reason why I say at least 6 total defects is because the medical intervention that was given to Valente, once the officers summoned medical intervention, it was difficult to tell exactly how many defects upon that initial autopsy examination, but that will be something conclusive once that examination is finalized. Any questions?